in that period of time, whatever gases have gotten down into your capture chamber are now gassing off, or are being extracted by your recycle pump, and any of the liquid butane that's down there can be gassed off because you're sitting in a warm bath or ambient, depending upon the time of year, what you're doing down there. And so you've got your recycle pump going in, you're pumping it from there back into your storage tank where it's condensed, and you can once again inject the liquid butane in. So it comes around through here, up, over, into your storage tank, and then out through your recycle valve into your recycle pump, from your recycle pump into your storage container, and from your storage container back in again. Yeah, pretty simple, straightforward. Okay, let's take this down and we're going to go look at some material out of the room. Packs of columns. Take your stuff and head this way. This is Eddie Kirk. He's our photographer.
That's tricky, bro.
We love Eddie Kirk.
Are you going to want to film outside today?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's some static here.
So that's what it is. That's what it is.
Best they can do.
Summertime.
You guys need to try to move in and let the rest of the crew come in. There you go, water, coffee. There's water on the table here. Oh, you brought real cream in? Don't spoil it.
Okay, material preparation. The first thing I'm going to say, the first and most important thing is get your material dry. If you don't have a dehumidification room and you live, you know, like, I don't know, what parallel are we? We're about 45 here now, aren't we? If you're in Eugene, you need a dehu room. I don't know where the line is drawn. I think all of Washington, all of Portland, you know, all of the Northeast. So all of us that have any humidity, we all need dehumidification chambers. We need it, you know, whether you set up a tent and put a dehu in it, whatever it is that you decide to do, you need to do it. You need to have a dehu room. And there's no other solution. I've tried all of the solutions because that dehu room meant I had to give up my closet. And so now I have a wall on my bedroom and my bed.
So what humidity level are you talking about?
Everything out. Everything you can get.
So I should be fine now where I'm at then, almost. Right?
I mean, most of the time.
Right.
But just watch.
I still have a dehuey room I can use. It's already set up. So.
Right. I mean, yeah.
And in the summertime, I'm sure it's going to be
fine.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you just have to pay attention to where you are, because the result of extracting moisture with your product is, yeah. Well, first you will extract moisture with your product if the moisture is there, because butane is mostly nonpolar, mostly, but there's nothing that's absolute. I mean, well, yeah, there is. I guess there is. Not many things. Not many things. Everything is a degradation. Everything is gray. You know, we don't have many absolutes in life. And so butane extracts enough water that you can also extract chlorophyll with it. And so if you have water in your product, you're more likely to pull color, green color. So that's the first place where it affects you. The second place where it affects you is that water forms a vapor barrier between the trichome, the product that you're, the cannabinoids that you're trying to extract. And contact is a critical part of extraction. You've got moisture there. solvent can't get to the hash oil to extract it, so it minimizes water, minimizes your yield. So that's number 2. The third thing that happens to you is that it gets evaporated along and gets carried along with the butane through your recycle pump and into your storage tank, where it's heavier than butane, so it settles on the bottom of your butane storage tank, where it continues to accumulate. And depending upon how much you extract in a long time or a very short time, depending upon what you're doing, you will puke rust into your product and destroy everything that you've just extracted. So, and it will happen because that water will sit in the bottom of your tank and rust the tank. So I'm working on sourcing some stainless steel tanks to eliminate that issue. But know this, stainless steel tanks, the cheapest one I've found so far, over $6 grand for a storage tank. I mean, buy my little Mark III's 25, storage tank $6 grand, okay? Just so you have some idea where dollars are falling into place here.
And even in the best scenario, the driest you can get the material, you're gonna end up with water in the storage tank, right? Pretty much.
That's my thinking. So, what do you do to resolve that issue? I don't know. Those of you that have access to machine shops and, you know, and we're all aligning ourselves with folks, trying to get our needs covered. What I'm looking to do is, you know, best case scenario, a stainless tank with a valve on the bottom such that you can pee off any water that's in there. Minimally, even if you didn't have a stainless tank, if you have that, because as it sits, what's going on now is best case is that you have multiple storage tanks, and that after a period of time, depending upon how much you extract, you turn them upside down and let them set for a couple of days until everything's sludged its way down to the bottom, because you've got emulsion down there, water and butane, which is oil and water mixing. You know, it's just like a crack in your block. You know what happens. That ugly sludge that was up there in the block. That's what you form at the bottom of the tank. And so it will spew out when you get. So then all you have to do is open your gas valve, which is flush with the top of your tank. So all the water is going to be right around the exit of that valve, where normally gases would be coming out, but because you've got gravity now, you can open it up and it'll spew out whatever toxic, noxious stuff is there, and you'll know when it's out and butane starts coming out. So that's the option right now. So just a warning about the moisture.
And would you also not recommend them not ever running that tank down? Like, make sure there's always butane in the storage tank, so there's a barrier between the water at the bottom and the butane.
Well, the issue is that no matter how much butane you've got in there, as the water begins to accumulate, it just displaces the butane upward. So, you know, you're just moving your way up to the dipstick. That's what happens, and as soon as there's enough water in that you're touching the bottom of that dipstick, you're spewing in water and rust. And which brings up another subject with respect to the solvents that you're all going to be using, be it propane, butane, N-butane, whatever, you know, instrument grade, pharmaceutical grade, whatever it is that you're going to use. These tanks, because they rust, I asked one of the guys that was going to be using N-butane that he filter his N-butane, that he distill it and check to see what residual he got out of the N-butane, because we know we get residual, we get that mystery oil if we do the bottom of a tank, or if we fill our tanks with can butane, we know we get mystery oil that we have to clean out. But what kind of mystery oil would you get, could you get if you were using N-butane? So the guy who had 2 machines, bought 2 machines from me, loaded two tanks of distilled N-butane. And in the first tank, he got this orange, nasty smelling sludge. He said it was awful. And in the second one, it was absolutely nothing. So even if you get N-butane, I would be more comfortable buying N-butane and not filtering it if it came straight from the source, the container that it was contained in. But when we buy it here, stateside, where they're buying it in bulk and just filling containers, and we're swapping containers out, know that you're swapping out to somebody else's whatever the fuck they did. And that's what makes me nervous, because that's obviously what happened to this guy. He got 2 canisters, and one was clean, and one they didn't. I mean, because they'll ask you, has anybody tried to return? Does anybody do any of this already?
Yeah.
I ordered.
That's why I got that
online.
filter from Isaac.
So, did they refuse to take your
My tank back?
yeah?
No, they haven't refused. I've replaced
See,
my
I've
tank
been
twice.
refused.
They haven't refused me ever.
Yeah, well,
I use Praxair.
Was it clean though?
What, my tank?
Was rust? It had no rust
I
in it.
didn't know rust on it. I don't.
See,
no,
you
I
have to
think-
be really careful. And so what the deal is, that nobody wants to, because if you take it back
I
and you
rented
tell them,
from them, so they have to take it back, or I'll just keep it.
well, yeah,
They charge me $15 a month.
I know, and they'll continue to charge you that $15 a month until you give it back to them, whether you're using it or not.
Oh, I know.
But the issue is that when you rent them from them, you're swapping. And now you're dependent upon whoever's behind you to have properly dehydrated their material before they extracted it, or they put water in their tank, and now they put liquid butane in it, and they're giving it to you, and it's started from a rust situation.
But that's when I started using that sulfur purifier, the gas sulfur purifier from Isaac.
From
I saw
Isaac,
a
yeah.
big difference in the moisture that you're talking about all the time. If you guys don't know, like if you don't take care of the moisture, it'll crack anyways. And like people automatically assume there's a lot of butane in there, the end consumer, the people that don't know what's up. But once I got Isaac's filter, that kept all the moisture out. It's like this long. And I put it on my machine and it filters it all out.
I know, the issue is that those filters, when I talk to Isaac, they're like $250.
Yeah, they are.
And they
expensive.
don't last for very long.
Yeah, I don't know how long it lasts. He told me he was going to tell me, but he didn't. He forgot.
Well,
I got my filter for free for trying
I know,
it,
but
so.
that's a whole. So I'm going to load this into a column, and this is the optimal size grate. I believe this is a 6 for surface area. We've tried larger, we've tried smaller. This is like optimal size.
That's 6 by 24.
So you want to get it broken down but not powdery?
6
Is that
by
what
8,
you're shooting for?
Pardon?
You want it broken
Correct.
down but not powdery?
Absolutely not powdery, and that's why we don't machine grind, because that's, it's like when you're drinking a cup of coffee, you get fines in the bottom when you,
Right.
because you have to grind the beans, but you get fines. And it's the same with this. If you grind with a machine, you will get fines. But if you hand press it through, it's less likely to have that happen. Any size, I'm thinking what I want is a nice stainless steel frame with, go to Granger and get stainless steel grating. This was just experimental, this is all galvanized. Or whether it's a sativa that has clear trichomes. But I haven't proven that to myself.
I know a guy that blasted prematurely. I didn't do it myself, but I saw his stuff. And it
On
was white.
indica?
I did.
Indica?
I
Yeah,
tested
it was
all
white.
all stages this year.
Indica?
Mhm.
And you've
Indica
got
and sativa.
nice light colored,
Mountain Dew throughout the whole thing.
beautiful, as long as it was
Yeah.
young and clear.
No, I had one strain that was completely milky, almost to the point where there was about, just a 0.1% of color coming into them. So yeah, I would say they were all 100% milky.
But there, so the oil, the resultant oil from that,
Was a tad. It was more amber colored
Right.
than Mountain Dew colored.
but if you had pulled it though when it was completely clear,
Yeah, I pulled it clear. I pulled them with milky white. And I pulled them. I did it all three
so
ways.
okay, so it was the same no matter what
No,
color.
it got darker. Like you're
It
saying.
continued to get darker.
Absolutely.
So that's my that was
For
my
sure.
The
suspicion.
longer it's there,
This is using.
The darker the the
No,
the more
that's
amber the
leaving it
trichome
grow.
gets, the more amber or the more
oil.
dark your oil is.
Your oil will be. So what you end up producing for people is highly dependent of, you know, if you produce for others, is
Excuse
highly
us.
dependent upon, oh, it's in the corner above my desk. You see it, the slab and the bottle, the jar. What you're able to produce is highly dependent upon the material that you got to begin with and where it was grown, which, presents issues with educating our general public. And, you know, it's going to be us that needs to do it. If you're young and partying, that clear stuff is great. But if you're old and you do that, you're in anxiety and can't sleep at night. So, and honestly, the crowd that's consuming cannabis is getting older every day. And we are the hugest sector of the population. So, we may not be dabbing yet, I am. But some of the older population is not into it. But they're getting there, and they're starting to understand that, you know, if they do the winterized oil, it's not as intense, it doesn't hurt their lungs, it's cleaner. So there's a lot of things that are coming up for the older people, and we are the biggest sector. Remember, my generation, we grew up in the 60s. It was almost legal. I mean, in Seattle, you just got a ticket for an ounce of pot in the 60s, and we thought surely it was going to go legal. So, I mean, you know, we grew up on it. And a huge number of old folks are coming back to it, so don't forget that sector of the population.
I do think that's true. We're the bulge, and it will be some of the market for you guys, and in a different kind of way.
And we don't believe in, you know, we were a bunch of hippies. We love pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
We don't want to do it. You know, a huge number of them. There's also the, you know, the people that bring it in. I mean, there's a huge group of that sector, so keep that sector in mind as well. But at any rate, so now you're blowing cannabis cut material. You would take whatever that's whatever that's clear, and you would take the whole bud that's well trimmed and perfect, and you would load your column with whole buds. And you would not pack them in, you would barely manipulate them, because you don't want to bruise. You know what happens as soon as you touch that trichome here. It's like you start bruising, it starts turning it dark.
Or it gets pinholes in it and it leaks all of the juice.
So you just have to be careful. And so you'll drop them down the tube and gently place them around in the tube.
My
so
machine trim sucks.
Oh, really bad.
use machine trim.
No, I'm saying machine trimmed weed that people put through like a
Yeah,
twister.
you can't even use that shit. It comes out black.
Oh, the trim is ugly.
No, not the trim, the bud.
But the
All
bud.
the buds, really?
Yeah, well,
I've never tried
as it
that.
tumbles,
Damage.
it puts pinholes in all of the trichomes, and so all of your good shit just leaks out.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And then it goes on the drying racks and gets even worse, and then people manipulate it on there.
I didn't even know the
You
nut.
get about
was
20%
Oh.
of your trichome at the
Yeah,
end of it.
it's really
I knew
bad.
that the trim was
Yeah, it's
not
rough.
even usable.
No, the trim, no, that's garbage.
Yeah.
You can use it for oral or topical.
For butters or just.
Oh, well, you can't really use it for oil because it's got so much chlorophyll in it that
Yeah.
those people that are sensitive to chlorophyll,
That's
have got-
true.
it's just ripping their stomachs apart. So you have to be really careful
Yeah,
when
that's
you use
true.
it.
You know,
I just throw all that shit.
we think
I
don't even mess with
People
it.
tell me they do machine trim. Oh yeah, I'm getting one of these. I'm going to do my machine trim, and I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's lurking out
I
there.
almost
That's
did
what
it.
Plan on
we've heard, but
extracting
now we're
chlorophyll.
hearing-
I almost did it, and
Now
then
we know
I
people
did my
who-
homework,
Well,
and
if
I
you have
realized it
400
was
pounds you need
bad.
to trim, it's about $100,000 to pay people to do trim right now.
That's
So,
true.
And the exposure that
Take
you
10 grand for a
if you have
trimmer
a
and
big
get
city,
burned
So,
out.
so it's going to go
But-
differently. Everybody's going to quit
Yeah.
trimming, and they're just going to blast.
But
So,
Exactly. That's what I'm.
Right, because
I mean, it's so
you're
much
ahead
cheaper.
right off the bat.
exactly, you saved a lot of money. in the
oh
beginning.
yeah, you can just take off all your families.
So I started out, the first blasting I did was fan leaves, really low yield. And then trim. And then I extracted for this doctor, and he brought in a QP of beautifully trimmed toplets. It said blast these. It was Northern Light. It was the most beautiful oil. It was this beautiful maroon colored oil. At any rate, so we blasted that, and it's like when we looked at it, it was like, oh my God, look at it. The yield was. So then I started blasting like the bottom third, and then I blasted the bottom half, and then I blasted the bottom two, and I just kept going up. Then I saved only the top 12 best buds, which I always gave away because I didn't smoke flowers anymore. I haven't for a long time. And then it was like, what? I'm giving away the best buds. What am I doing? So then I started blasting all of it. And I've been blasting the whole plant.
And how much better is the flavor over blasting trim, do you think?
Okay, so it's like this.
Blasting is
If someone held, put two piles in front of you on a table and said, you can do whatever you want, and one of the piles was beautiful buds, and the other pile was trim,
Right.
which would you smoke?
Well, I'd smoke the bud, of course, but what I'm noticing is that I haven't had the oil from bud. I've only had it from trim, and it tastes great. I'm thinking, how can this be?
Oh yeah.
Yes,
So you have to
And it's more
understand that the flavonoids and aromatics are developed in the
Are
flower.
mostly in the
Where, oh, what a relief. Where is a, let me sneak in here and get one thing. One thing.
A couple of guys want to follow me to the back here. We'll grab some chairs.
How about a heat pad for the bottom of that?
Heat pads have some inherent problems. That machine weighs about 140 to 160 pounds, depending on options and extras. It'll crush just about any lab grade heat mat, so then you're having to build some kind of a little riser pad for it, and extra welding and extra things, and I don't let my machine go for long enough. We're running it all the time. So the upgrade would have to be built and ready to go to be able to install it, and we just haven't got there yet. There's also jacketing for those bottom kettles where they're being held at a controlled temperature with a water source. And then it's just jacketed through the drum, but it's a custom order.
From Brisk.
The issue,
I don't know.
no,
You guys aren't
this is
using Brisk?
stainless. Well, the issue is that,
Who are you using for heating jackets?
the issue is that most jackets are not made for the water conditions that we're dealing with.
I know, I tried using
And
the Brisk
they
one,
will
too.
burn, they will torch. Everyone, and that was exactly what I thought would happen when everybody came up
I'll
with
take
that
that.
brilliant solution to begin with. I wanted jackets, and everybody's headed toward jackets. But the issue is that we started with off the shelf, so I'm working on a jacket for off the shelf. So
And that's a rice cooker?
I would not, if I had to do this over again, I would not buy this watt heater or this soup pot. It was effective when we were doing medical stuff, and we could heat to whatever temperature we wanted because we didn't care about color. We were going to eat it anyway, so it didn't matter. We were going to decarboxylate and eat it. So that's all of this was designed for that. And we ended up having to learn how to do a dabbing oil. The most flavorful dabbing oil. And it took us a long time to unlearn the science part of it. You know, I was told you needed to leave a little butane in the oil. I had no idea how much. I mean, that's what I mean. It's like I didn't realize it was like half. You know, I didn't realize how much. And so I was never able to do it because I was only using a tiny bit. Not acceptable. So, and because that's the way this machine works. So it took a long time to get there. Okay, so at any rate, here's the straight a flare off the back with no gate and no valve on it, and I'm hooking that up to the gauge, and we're hanging it. I wish we could push this further. Okay, my thumb's not going to do it. At any rate, it's really helpful if you can hang it somewhere. That's why I'm saying as soon as you get into a situation where you know where it's going to be and it's easy, man, I'd be hanging something permanent off of there so that you're not fighting this gauge all the time, that it's always right there and you can easy to look at. I find it cumbersome. Okay, so next we're going to be hooking up our recycle hose, which comes from this recycle valve here. Our flare fitting, so I'm not cinching it down tight, but I have the issue of dislocating fingers, so I do use tools, but I use them gingerly such that I'm not corking anything down. And then that goes into the in port of the recycle pump. Boy, I haven't used setup with a. These are CPS 21s, TR 21s, and normally we have dual sets sitting up over here, but we've disconnected one of them to attach and use on our system down here. We can talk about recycle pumps for a minute. Don't buy Appions.
Not designed for this.
Don't buy Appions. Pro Maxes are not bad, but they break too. The TR21s, the CPS TR21s are rated for gaseous butane anyway. So, and if you run liquid in it, you're going to kill it anyway. So you're rated for running stuff that won't kill it. And it's pretty fast. The downside, it's loud as hell. And hot is all get out.
250 degrees.
Really hot. And so this should be interesting.
It's not too hot that you can't run it on a hot summer day, or?
Well, there's ways to resolve it.
The question I have is,
We get our
it's
needs.
so hot coming in here, but
Okay. We don't quite have that.
I already answered my question.
Also, yeah, but typically, with the smaller machines, or with the smaller units, we've not had the issues that we've had with larger machines, and that's where all the protective stuff started really heavily coming into play. But I'm going to walk from this point. Now all we've done here is we've connected our gauge, and we've connected our recycle pump with a filter on it. Now when you put these filters on, date them and weigh them. And then, after you run, let's say 10 to 20 pounds, depending upon humidity, take it off and weigh it. And if it picks up, I know we pick up 8 grams, it's in the vacuum off the moisture, and we'll reuse it for a while. So, if normally running this pump, I just don't want to take the whole system apart over here. Normally when I'm running this pump, I would also be running this heating coil, and this is the one I was talking about. Let me see if I can pick this up a little bit. Not very well. You see what I'm seeing? Can you see it?
It's a worm, right?
It's a coil.
Yeah. Same kind of coil you drop down like
50
in.
foot.
20-foot
still in
heating
there, really.
coil. And so, and it's sitting, excuse me, it's sitting between here and here, right? So we came out from here and went into the coil around the pot when we had this originally set up around there. Came out of there, went into the into the filter, liquid line filter dryer, and then into your pump, right? Now not only have you got a pump that heats it up, but you've heated up the gas before you even got to the pump that heats it up.
What temperature do you keep the coil in that crock pot?
100, just at the lowest or less. You know, we turn it off and on as needed. Because I mean, the only time really where that's really critically important is when you're dumping any of the liquid butane from your system into the capture chamber. Once all of that turbulence is settled and you haven't got particulates floating around in the gaseous atmosphere of that capture chamber, then the need for that coil is minimized. If you're just like at the end of the whole thing and you're purging off whatever butane's left in your tank and or in your capture chamber, you're just recovering, so there's not much danger. So you could turn it off at that time. Okay, so from there, you're going to go from here into your recovery tank, or your storage tank over here. But, and so you're going to want to go into the gas or the vapor valve. Now on this storage tank, the vapor valve is the blue valve, but that's not always true. So definitely check it out. Look at your valve and make sure that when you're installing this hose, that you install it on the correct. Would somebody hand me a? Oh, I got it. That you're installing this vapor hose on the correct line, because if you install it on the other line, your system won't work. So that's a good reason of shutoffs for these valves. Are those open? Is this valve open, you know, that you have on the system? So you want to make sure your system is completely in line. Okay, so we know that after we get all these hoses hooked up, that we're going to want to pull a vacuum on the system. But there's this one hose that you can't pull a vacuum on because it's not attached to the system itself. It's between your recycle pump and your storage tank. And that's the one I'm holding in my hand. So typically what we do is have an inline ball valve. This is an inline flared ball valve. You'll want to get a couple of these too. They come in packs of 3. Actually, the one that you really should get is the one that just has a flare on the end and just this little ball valve. But all of them have been used up in the other systems, so I haven't had a chance to go get any more. So, at any rate, so in order to accomplish a vacuum in this line, we're just going to hook it up to the vacuum pump, open this valve, pull a vacuum on the line, then close this valve, then re-hook it up over there, and now I got a vacuum on this line. If I didn't do that, every time I hook this system up, I would pull this much atmosphere into my tank. So that's what I'm trying to avoid here. Okay, here we go. Oops, wait, I haven't pulled my vacuum. Getting the head of the cart here, or the horse. It'd be nice to be ahead of the cart. I feel like I'm home. Okay. Now we don't have a valve on this pump, so how do you tell you that you've got a vacuum? Turn the pump on, open this valve. It shouldn't take very long, and you can tell when it's done because when you close this valve, it doesn't change the noise of the pump. So I know I've got a vacuum going. Now I'm still going to have a little bit of atmosphere being pulled into my tank because, Ty?
Yes, ma'am.
Could you help me with some dry ice, please?
A little bit
The
of
atmosphere because the link between the valve and the
Pardon?
connection. You're talking about you're still going to pull atmosphere in?
We're still going to pull in this much atmosphere.
Right.
So if I had this ball valve with a flare right on the end of it, it would be right there. I'd still put in. Each time there's a minuscule amount that you're going to pull in. But the point is to minimize that as much as possible. Because in the end, if you get too much atmosphere in that tank, atmosphere is not compressible. Butane you can compress into a liquid, you know, but atmosphere you can't. And so it takes up storage space in that tank, and so your pressure readings will be off. So you're not actually going to know the true pressure. And you're not really going to know, because you don't know the true pressure, you don't know where in the process you are. So if you have issues trying to pull down below, you know, issues at 10, 14 pounds, and it's like, man, it's taking forever, I just can't get down. Likely you have atmosphere in your tank, and you need to burp that atmosphere. The best way to do that is you want to leave it set for at least 24 hours so that there's a good separation between the butane and the atmosphere, because the atmosphere is lighter, so it's going to float to the top. And then when you open the gas valve, you can burp off the atmosphere.
Can you repeat that one more time? What happens when then you can tell there's atmosphere in there?
If you, let me help you out a little bit. Don't be too nervous about taking precise notes, because the reason that you really like Eddie Kirk.
Oh, I take notes so I can remember. Okay. I never. I will be selling diagram. This picture afterwards. $5. Take notes so I can remember.
I used to take notes with colored pencils, and everybody wanted to use my notes because they could tell what was going on. But the reason I say what I'm saying is that if you don't catch something, it will be you will be able to catch it on video. So actually, the reason you can tell when you've got oxygen, too much oxygen, or when you've started building up a significant amount of oxygen in your tank, is when you can't pump your system down. You can't get any further into vacuum than, let's say, you start having troubles at 10 to 15 inches of vacuum, and it's hard to get down below that, and it took forever getting there. You know you probably got atmosphere in your tank. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so now that line's hooked up. The only other couple of lines that we need are going to be our vacuum line, which, and notice we've got them all color-coded. It's always nice to know which line you're wearing out. And by the way, it's usually the liquid butane in line that wears out the fastest.
No, that's the denatured alcohol and dry ice, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, who's got there we go, yeah. I can do this if you do that. I grab that just to give it a little make sure it's tight. There we go. Okay. And then is this one.
You came back fast.
Yeah.
Super fast.
Now, when we're running and we've got a significant amount of butane in that tank, that'll be okay. I can reconnect this line. Normally, we would have this filter coming into the liquid butane injection valve. And the reason for this filter, I mean, we generally have, well, if you look over here, there's filters everywhere. There's a filter coming into the tank. There's a filter coming into the recycle pump. There's a filter coming in to the system. And the one coming into the system is in case the other ones fail. because I don't want rusted price, and we really need to resolve the issue on a permanent basis, because I forgot to tell you the most important thing about water in your material is that the bitter enemy of any oil is water. It forms an emulsion and it starts causing rancidity upon contact. I mean, it isn't instant, but the rancidity begins. And so it is really important that you don't have water in your system. Some of it becomes bound to the cannabis molecules and, you know, and are difficult to get out, even if you boil through the boiling point of water. So, final point of why you don't want water in your system. So at any rate, this is to protect, to make sure that you don't get anything else in your system. Now, we are going to be injecting can tapping, and so I don't, one can, I just want to show you one can. So we don't want to be passing that liquid butane through the filter. So I'm just going to be connecting this hose directly, and we can reinstall the filter after the fact. I think so.
So you guys aren't running the intake on this? Or?
No.
You run the cans to the propane?
We, you know, I'm going to give JD's lecture on propane, or on butane, because I'm not, he is the process engineer. I'm an electrical. So what he says is that all butane comes from two places in the world. Taiwan, is it Taiwan?
I'm assuming.
I think it's Taiwan, and anyway, at any rate, so they have these big vats of butane, and it's, you know, in its natural form. So it's been fractionated off, and there will be some components on either side of it molecularly that are slightly contaminated, but nothing of any ugly issue whatsoever. And so then, with that butane, there's three things that potentially could happen. Most of it goes for lighter butane, and it has to be substantially filtered of the waxes, because there's a lot of paraffin in it to get rid of most of the waxes, or it would ruin the lighters. And then the next thing that would go for is instrument grade and butane. And so at that point, the lighter butane, of course, is, let me backstep, is clean at 6 parts per billion. That's 0.000006. And so the instrument grade butane is rated at 99.5% clean. So what's cleaner, 0.5 or 0.000006?
0.0006. That 0.5 does have stuff in it. I know, I've noticed.
So, but it's been inspected, and it's definitely that. So it gets stamped, and you got to pay for the inspection. And the pharmaceutical grade is 99.9.
Yeah. So is that stuff better? That's what I was sort of asking.
Well, no, it's no better. I'm not saying it's, but where the issue is that once you get it in the cans, you've got whatever it is that you're dealing with the tank, however they're filling it, like we discussed before, or if it's in cans, then you've got the seals and you've got whatever is the lubricant on the inside of the cans.
And you're losing half, like those cans, so you only get like half the amount of butane in there anyways.
Well, no, it's quite a bit, depending
on the brand. On the brand, yeah. But 25% to half, I mean, they're all landing in between there.
So
loss of butane, right?
The Lucien we've had really good luck with, and that's kind of why we stick with it.
I never used this.
Yeah, not many people have, but because it's only rated clean times 4. But if you look at the
filtration doesn't matter.
Yeah,
that's all just a gimmick.
If you get to the MSDS on these puppies, it's cleaner than almost anything out there. So.
Do you use Lucerne and not anything?
Lucerne. Yes. I hope.
I've been wanting to change.
I don't. It's just that it's when we did our put our bids out for intake. The first one came back at like $600.
I paid $300 for my 20-gallon flat tank.
When?
Maybe 7 months ago.
50 pounds?
No, 25 gallons.
Oh, okay,
Or 25
so
pounds.
50 pounds, this is 50 pounds. So it was just that it was
About the same thing.
a huge amount more money or the same amount of material.
But then you
so-
gotta get all the contaminants out of there, all the special
Well,
oil.
the interesting thing is that irrespective of whether we're dumping N-Tane in or whether we do it the same way anyway, and the only difference with how we dump it into the system, if it's whether we're cleaning it out, whether we're distilling it or whether we're not distilling it, is if we're distilling it and cleaning out the solvent, then I would open this up and clean it out. And if I weren't cleaning out the solvent, then I wouldn't open it up, I would just blast.
Yeah.
But you know, you're going to open it up and look at it no matter what you do anyway, so.
But you
I
still
mean,
gotta do
that's-
that first dry run, no matter what, right? To clean out your tank. Even if it's in tank, that's what
Well, so, no, that's what we're going through right now, is how we can tap, which is exactly the same way. I mean, if I would hook this up to my tank of tane, and I would just start and heat it up, and I would start blasting tane in there. So, and
know about
slowly,
can
and using this gauge the same way, I'd still be moving it from here to in there. That's the goal. The end goal is to move it from whatever source that you have, get it into here, gas it off, get it into there. That's the whole point. But when you're gassing it off in here, whatever undesirable byproduct or contaminant that might be in that tank is going to stay in the bottom of this container so that you can wipe it out and get rid of it. And then from that point in time on, because everything that made it into there has left its contaminants in here because it's been gassed off. So you don't have to run anything. I mean, it's already been run. So it's clean and ready to go as soon as you finish this. And when we came to the understanding that there was contaminant in it, that's all we did. That's the only step we added to the process, was to open that up and wipe it out. Could you give me the can tapper, please?
Dang tappers. They
This
make me
is
nervous.
Ty. If you guys haven't met Ty, he's my right and left hand. He has, I ran this machine right when we designed it. And I don't think maybe I didn't even run it then. Maybe I was just telling you. I think I was just telling, because the handles on these bigger valves get really hard to manipulate. So Ty has a huge amount of experience, all of the experience on these big machines, knows how to run them really well. He's never run one of these. He came to work with me when I was upgrading to that. So, and then we fumbled around with
small stuff.
Processing, so he hasn't done this one. So what we're going to do now is just attach this can. It's called a side can tapper.
Now, where do you get those?
You can get them on eBay for like
Oh, yeah?
15 bucks or
Okay.
14 bucks. They're really easy. Hold on, I'll be right back.
So I'm getting rid of the intake. Charge them 50 bucks.
And Ty,
Yes, ma'am.
would you give me some hot water too? So so what we're going to do is we're going to open everything up and okay, got everything open and pull a vacuum. I turn my pump on and I'm open my valve. Ty is gone for hot water, and since we are
Not plugged in.
Yeah, I see that. Never mind. Since we are just gassing off butane, it doesn't matter if it's really hot. So,
Does that change the shade, the oil to darker?
would you twist this on? If the other way, I think it's yeah, that one. It's, I don't know what they both turn on. I was stuck and it's not ever going to turn on. Is that the deal?
WD-40 maybe.
Yeah, okay, never mind.
This one can go more though.
Well, if you can get it on there, that's great. Okay, we're down to, we'll pull it down a little further. Oh, it's winter. If we can get it down to 28, 28.5, we'll be happy.
So yeah, does darker water, or does water
Yes.
make the oil darker depending on the heat? It's
Yeah.
like in the magnesium, they tell you to recover at 110, but I notice everything is darker out.
Yeah.
Like if you look at my oil, it's pretty yellowish, but it gets darker. It has a dark tint to it because I have to recover my gas at 110 degrees. So you want to stay under 90, right? 95?
We kept, while we're running, 72 ideal, not above 80,
Okay.
not below 68, critical.
72?
So 68 to 80, max, 72 ideal.
We'll be sending a text in. Okay.
So, y'all understand that doing part of this class and having it videoed, you don't have to worry about your face. It's not going to be visible to anyone but the people in this class who will have a link to watch the video again. So if you miss things, you can. 72. Okay, so I'm going to close this valve, turn off the pump, leave it set for a minute, make sure we maintain our vacuum. So now when
That's empty.
Yes, so it's empty. We pulled the vacuum, it's holding its vacuum, so now we're ready to go. This pump is an oilless pump. All the recycled pumps are oilless pumps. That means that it is obtaining its lubricant by the particulates in the atmosphere that it's pumping. So if you pump below 22 inches of vacuum with this pump, and we are below 22 inches of vacuum, you will wear that pump out prematurely. So the plan is to get some particulates in there, i.e. some butane in there, at least some gases, before we turn that pump on. And when we turn that pump on, we have to immediately turn on this valve and the valve in the blue valve in the storage tank, such that we can dump that butane, the gaseous butane, back into the tank. So, what we're going to do first is tap this can. And we do that with a side can tapper. It's got its penetration at the bottom, and it's pretty sharp on one side, and it taps really fast. Irrespective of that, ooh, I don't like that. Irrespective of that, I want to be careful not to puncture on this seal or on the bottom rim, but to be close enough to that bottom rim that I gain the strength of that bottom panel so that it doesn't dent in the side of the can. And once I do that, I can open this line and we'll be sucking butane into the capture chamber where it'll gas off. And you'll be able to see the gauge immediately increase. I've got the line, the seam facing up so that I know it's not next to the puncture. And I'm going to just do a quick squeeze and then open this. You see the pressure go up. And now I can turn on my pump, open the valve. And did you open that blue valve too, County? Yeah. And the general range of operation on these pumps, thank you, is between positive 20 and negative 20. Is generally where you're functioning. Sometimes you'll go higher, but if you go above 20, start looking around to see what's going on. Be case it's continuing to go higher. Takes a minute for it to pull down, but not too long. In this case, we're only going to tap this one can. It's too cold to stand out here and have people tap down. So we're just going to tap this one can, pull the system apart, and Ty so graciously saved the container for the cans that he tapped yesterday for the big system. He tapped and asked the case yesterday. And so, here you go, here's the mystery oil from the master casing of canned.
Pretty well said it's an oil. That's out of 72 cans.
You can definitely smell the canned.
It's not. I've had other cans go triple and quadruple that and then single master case, so it does vary a little bit from can to can and from the same manufacturer. It's pretty well standard to lithium oil because it's really having a little variable that's the highest grade that we can find. I believe a couple of the others they recommend are like Calibri or Vessel 5-way. All of them have had proper parts of the pumps that are still low and very
Smells nasty.
So before you turn the recovery tank on, this should have been open. You have to open that first, and then turn that on?
No, I generally turn the recovery tank on, and then right after that, I should have turned this on. You know, the order would be that, this, that. Thank you for clarifying. And then I'm going to want to change cans when you get to 0. If you pull down below -5, you're risking the implosion thing. It's not that it's ugly, it scares the crap out of you usually. And you're sucking atmosphere into your system. So as soon as I get down to 0, I close my valve, release the can, and tap the next can. So what's gone, it's all gone straight in because I left this valve open, it's shut straight down to the bottom where it's gassing off. And now we're reducing still.
Gas to liquid, back to gas, back to liquid, back to gas. Trying to get my eyes on the stuff.
So it's come in through here, down into the bath of hot water, it's gassed off, comes back into the pump, pumped out of the pump, and back into the storage tank.
What's the difference between a color and the storage?
Between what we're doing right now, we are distilling. Yeah. It wouldn't be distilling if you didn't clean it out. But
We're going from the gas to the liquid back to the gas to the liquid.
yeah, that's exactly what it is.
It will make it, like, the 5 times and 3 times, it will make it more purified when you run it, right?
Well, it's only going to happen in one time. Because from here on out, well, you know, if there's still stuff in it, you'd be dropping it every time. But theoretically, you've removed one already. And now, the filtering process is all that we're doing is just trying to separate flavors and keep various components from one room that we don't like. But as far as cleanliness, we're pretty much there. Okay.
Butane, that's what you need to do.
Right. Okay, so now this is off, and so I'm going to actually I'm going to close that.
Because you don't want to put atmosphere in the system.
Right, and what I'm thinking I want to do at this point in time is that I want to put this filter back in line. So in the end, I'm going to take this apart. We're going to pull our vacuum again anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
No atmosphere this time, right?
No. I hope. I did gas it off before I ran it last time too, so.
Got rid of the other pump too, it looks like.
Yeah, and that was the issue.
It was?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Now we're sucking it down, heating up in here. So now what we're going to do is put our hand up here, start opening this valve slowly, such that we're flooding the column. We have this valve open, so when I flood this column, it's going to overflow down here. Yeah, put your hand up here and feel it. Oh, yeah, I'm coming. Here we go. And I'm going to start counting. 1,001, 1,002, 1,002, 1,003, 1,004. So I close the overflow valve,
All that is full.
and then I close this. So now we're full. We've done some down here. Our pressure went up, but it's going to come down pretty fast because we didn't dump much down here. It's mostly we're just evacuating gases like that.
That's why you don't use lighters around here.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay, we're down to 0, so I'm going to displace it again. So I'm going to open up this valve fast this time, because this valve's closed, so it doesn't matter. Now I'm going to open this valve slowly to the count of 8, which is what we did last time. So that I know this whole column of butane will be displaced into the capture chamber.
So if you don't open that, you won't be able to get all the butane in there? It'll hold some in this line?
Oh yeah, it's just going to stay there right now until I open it up. So it's,
Oh, I got you, because you gotta open it up.
right. So I'm going to look, I'm going to watch and try to open this so slowly, because I don't want it to splash all over down there and get particulates in the atmosphere such that I suck them up with the pump. So when I run it, okay, that was my 8, so I'm going to close it, and then close it. So now I'm holding my pressure inside of the column with these 2 valves closed. And now I'm going to wait for it to pump down again.
The 2 valves are closed, there's a valve coming over there.
No, those 2 valves are open. The only closed valves are these.
Okay.
So as soon as we fill the butane, as soon as we fill this up with butane, I counted to 8, right? Yep. And then I know that I've completely displaced this column. And that went through here, yeah, and then down there. So we're at 10 now, it's pulling down. So it's within the normal range of operation between plus 10 pounds of pressure, plus 20 pounds of pressure, and minus 20 inches of vacuum. So as soon as we get down to 0, we're going to do it again. Now on your notes, it says minus 10. You can go that far. But we're doing it at 0 for this reason. There's pressure in here, and if you put too much vacuum in here, it's going to pull it down and you'll have a big splash. So I don't want a huge pressure differential. I want it to come out, but I don't want it to go splashing out. want to separate the column from the tank. Now as soon as you do that, you've got material in there. By material I mean your trim, your products, whatever you've got in there, is in there. And it's got residuals of solvent in there, and it will start building pressure. So that's why I immediately unclamped and released the vacuum. And if you upgrade it by putting in a sight glass, and you isolate this column, that sight glass is isolated too. So if you build pressure in here, it doesn't show there. You can build pressure on that sight glass and blow the sight glass. So if you do add a sight glass, you also want to minimally add a gauge, and preferably for safety reasons, add another valve on the